Joining me now to start us off today, our team of reporters, NBC News correspondent Garrett Haake, NBC News investigative correspondent Tom Winter, and Allie Raffa is outside the White House for us. Garrett, I want to start with you. You were behind this great reporting about Trump's frustrations with his legal and cash problems. Tell me what you're hearing. What are sources telling you inside Trump world?
Well, the cash problems extend between Trump personally in the legal capacity to the campaign. Right now, they are very much in fundraising mode across the whole spectrum of everything that he needs to do between now and November if he wants to be president again. And I'm told that he and some of the people in his upper echelon, both within the campaign and sort of the broader circle around Mar-a-Lago, are frustrated to be in this position. And as I sit here right now, there's still not a clear answer of how they're going to get out of it. They've tried to, some of his allies have hit up some of the major donors to suggest the possibility that people could guarantee his bond. That has, as best I can tell, fallen flat. They've not been able to win over the courts. They have this emergency appeal that could either be answered at any time or just ignored between now and Monday. And they seem to have ruled out the possibility of declaring bankruptcy, something that I don't think has any political appeal to them. So this is very much an open question. And while it's all being asked and debated, we're not seeing Donald Trump. We haven't seen him on the campaign trail other than that brief clip you showed when he went to vote on Tuesday. And we don't have any public events scheduled for him anytime in the near future. Money is job one right now for the Trump campaign.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. There's talk of seizing his assets. And as you're noting, Garrett, he's been quite fiery about that. That could potentially energize some of the supporters around him. But that would be extraordinary.
It would be extraordinary. And I think there's another good question to ask here, whether Letitia James wants to go down that road for fear of kind of stirring up the hornet's nest here. And remember, I think we should sort of expectations set here. I don't think even in that scenario you'd see somebody come in and padlock Trump Tower or take the sign off 40 Wall Street or something like that. What you'd be more likely to see are liens placed on these things. You might see bank accounts sealed, the kind of thing that we might frankly only have a visual of if Donald Trump posts about it on Truth Social. And so there's an opportunity for him here to kind of try to make this into part of his cause, the idea that he's been unfairly targeted. But I think we see this somewhat in the fundraising numbers where his donations from small dollar donors have gone down over the course of his campaign, but also just generally in the sort of phase we're in the campaign, there may be diminishing returns for stoking that level of outrage. The universe of people who are deciding who's going to be the president as opposed to who's going to be the Republican nominee is quite different. And so while that's worked very well for him so far, it may not continue to work in the same way the further we get into the calendar.
It's a really great point, Garrett. And very quickly, I keep going back to this point, and we just set it up, which is that, yes, President Biden is out fundraising Donald Trump right now. He's got more money in the bank. But history tells us that doesn't necessarily predict which way a race is going to go or which way voters are going to go.
No, that's absolutely right. I mean, having the resources to get your message out is everything, but you still have to have a message that sinks into voters if you're actually going to win. And I think that'll be the challenge for Biden. He's got to reverse his, negative numbers in terms of his job approval rating. That's something he can do in the job as president for free. That's not a money question here, right? And I think, realistically speaking, by the time this race is over, both of these men are going to spend, and their allies are going to spend something like $1 billion apiece. So we're talking about money on a scale like we've never seen before in presidential elections. I don't think anybody's going to be truly cash strapped. So the advantage is certainly with Biden here. But is it definitive? Is it the kind of thing that swings this race one way or the other? I doubt it.
Yeah, great reporting, as always, Garrett. Thanks for being here in person. Really appreciate it. Tom, let me turn to you. We, of course, have some updates today in the New York criminal case against Trump. What's the very latest, particularly as it relates to those documents that were turned over in this case and the delay that occurred there, Tom?
Sure, Kristen. So it's all about Michael Cohen. And depending upon who you talk to, he's the star witness for the Manhattan District Attorney's Office in this upcoming 34-count felony case against the former president. And obviously, the Republican frontrunner, as you and Garrett have been discussing. Prosecution might say their documents are the front runner, but either way, Michael Cohen expects a significant cross-examination. And what the defense for Donald Trump is going to try to do is to impeach his credibility. And how might they do that? Introduce all sorts of evidence that have already been gathered in the course of a wide-ranging federal criminal investigation in which Michael Cohen pleaded guilty to, and then, of course, his subsequent guilty plea tied to special counsel Robert Mueller and his discussions with FBI agents there. And that's a reason, in part, why we're seeing this discussion about the documents today, because Manhattan prosecutors, about a year ago, and even before that, had requested a whole slew of these documents from federal investigators. And at the time, federal investigators turned over every document they thought might be responsive, in their view, to the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. Fast forward to January of this year, Kristen, and it was Trump who served a subpoena on that office, asking for additional information of federal prosecutors. Some of that information federal prosecutors got after they were requested it and provided information to the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. Some of these requests were different and new, and some of these requests had to do with things that the Manhattan District Attorney's Office says that they already had or had turned over. All told, they say their review is still ongoing here, that 270 pages of over 170,000 documents are relevant to their case in their belief, and of that, 172 pages are tied to Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation. Of course, that's not connected to this particular case at all. So we'll continue to see the back and forth that'll play out here on the docket, Kristen, and then eventually have a hearing on Monday, which might go a long way to explaining how all this happened, whether or not it's ultimately really relevant to how things proceed going forward, what the judge might do, and of course, the ultimate question, when we might get a trial date here.
Yes, we will be watching very closely. Let me just follow up with you very quickly, Tom, on that final point. Tell us specifically what is going to happen at that hearing on Monday, and could we get a trial date potentially then, or no? Are we still in a holding pattern?
Yeah, I fully expect that we'll get some information as to whether or not there's going to be a trial date, whether or not the judge wants more information, whether he wants the defense to give them a little bit more time and wants them to have a little more time to review some of these documents. I think all that's going to be made crystal clear on Monday, Kristen, and we'll have a much better sense of where this is going. Of course, with the delay that's already been entered in this case, we're running into Passover, and then there's the logistical challenges, which you well know, involving the Secret Service and somebody who's a presumptive nominee, and of course, just getting everything together in time to have this in Lower Manhattan. So there's a lot of different moving parts here, and I do expect to get some inclination from the judge, a trial date here, if not an exact date on the books. It's all going to be focused on these documents and some additional disclosures, by the way, that were made from some other figures in the case that haven't gotten as much attention. So that should all likely be addressed on Monday. The judge very strictly saying this is the only thing we're going to be talking about. So the idea of presidential immunity that's come up in this case and other things, the judge has already said, I don't want to talk about that at all.
All right. Well, we'll check back in with you on Monday to get the full update there. Tom, thanks so much. Really appreciate that. Allie Raffa, let me turn to you. I read that quote from President Biden, clearly pouncing on former President Trump's legal, or I should say financial troubles right now. Is that going to be woven into a stump speech? Is that going to become part of the strategy? Because right now he's saying this at closed-door fundraisers.
That's right, Kristen. And you mentioned that this is now the second time President Biden has made that joke. And it follows this shift we've seen over the last few months where the president during these private, closed-door, off-camera fundraisers is much more sharp in his criticism of Trump. He delivers these much more sharper attacks, whereas his public remarks, he is still sometimes referring to Trump as his predecessor and not even specifically naming him. But this was last night the first time that we heard him lean into former President Trump's finances and how they relate to his legal troubles. We know that there was a decision made by the Biden campaign months ago not to take advantage of his legal woes as political ammunition. But last night's comment was revealing in the sense that it showed that the campaign is now seeing these two as separate, and they're seeing that Trump's finances are fair game to be attacked by President Biden. So it's going to be interesting to see whether we see more of this, whether we continue to see this in private fundraisers, or whether this spills into more of the public view. But sources close to the campaign tell me today that they don't think that President Biden even needs to seize on this. They say that the Biden team has a near constant flow of ammunition against former President Trump from Trump himself in the form of his comments at rallies, in the form of his comments on his social media platform. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Biden team goes forward with these financial remarks, Kristen.
It certainly is. And just very quickly, Allie, there's going to be this unprecedented, massive fundraiser next week featuring all three Democratic presidents, former President Obama, former President Clinton, set to join President Biden. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, this fundraiser taking place at Radio City Music Hall a week from today in Manhattan. And it really offers the Biden campaign an opportunity to reach out to Democratic donors from across the party's spectrum, also donors of all ages, as we see the Biden campaign continue to try to reach out and make some inroads with young voters. So part of the thinking behind having former President Obama as well as former President Clinton, in addition to obviously President Biden, is to reach a wider swath of the Democratic Party. And this fundraiser is expected to be extremely lucrative, with at least 3,000 people expected to be in attendance and more than $10 million expected to be raised, Kristen.
Yeah, former President Clinton was referred to as the explainer-in-chief in 2012 when he helped then President Obama win re-election. So they are making it very clear they're going to be a part of this effort. Great conversation, guys. Thanks so much. Garrett, Tom, and Allie, really appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.